welcome to Growing Up ATL, where we, the Mayor's ATL Year of the Youth Ambassadors, take the lead in producing and hosting content tailored specifically for the youth by the youth.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey.
How would you like us to address you first off?
Fahamu is fine. Yeah.
Okay. Where are you from originally and what brought you to Atlanta?
I am originally from Brooklyn, New York, and I came to Atlanta in '93 to attend the Atlanta College of Art.
Brooklyn, New York. Okay. What specifically, since you came to Atlanta, what made you want to come here?
So when I was in high school, I won a statewide art competition.
Wow.
And at the time, which, you know, I knew I wanted to go to college for art, you know, and I was planning to attend the Art Institute of Atlanta because I learned that they had an animation program and my interest was cartoon animation. But a recruiter from the Atlanta College of Art, you know, came to my high school to meet me and talk to me about attending ACA. And he explained that while the Art Institute was a great school, they only offered a associate's degree, which is like a 2-year degree. And if I attended the Atlanta College of Art, I would get a bachelor's degree, a BFA. And they also offered me a scholarship. So ding, I'm in. Yeah.
Being from Brooklyn, what was the transition like from there to Atlanta in culture?
It was interesting. And I should say I was in South Carolina by the time I was like in high school. So I came here from South Carolina. But even, you know, having lived in the South and coming to Atlanta, it was a completely different experience. It was a culture shock, to be quite honest with you. The way people talked was crazy to me. I couldn't understand anything anybody was saying. I think the first time that I ever went to the AUC, because I had a friend that went to Morehouse, and the first time I went to the campus of the AUC, I was like, where in the world did all these black people come from? I had never seen that many black people in one place in my life. And so, you know, those kinds of things were really amazing to me. And then even you know, the art scene, the art community, you know, things like the National Black Arts Festival, all of those experiences just really like expanded, like very rapidly expanded my perspective of what it meant to be black.
Now, you talked a bit about high school and college. I want to go back further than that. What really inspired you to be an artist?
Thank you for that. Yeah, I've been drawing since I could hold a pencil. I'm not sure like what initially like sparked it for me, but I can just remember being in like kindergarten, first grade. Back then, you know, cartoons were a lot less sophisticated, right? So I used to watch like the Smurfs and things like that, and you know, Fred Flintstone, Bugs Bunny, you know, and those cartoons, like, you know, they might be on screen for like 30, 45 seconds without moving, just their mouth is moving. And I would try to draw them as fast as I could before they moved again. And I used to draw characters on my notebooks and stuff. And my teachers would let me draw characters on the chalkboard in the classroom. My friends would, oh, can you draw that on my notebook? And, you know, so it was like a thing that like immediately like garnered attention. Like people would really like move, like, wow, you did that? Like, can you do it for me? And, you know, so it just stuck for me.
You mentioned some of the experiences that you've had since you've been here. Can you tell us the one that was most impactful?
I would say there were two things. One, you know, even though I had this like passion and love for art, I'd never been in an art gallery or museum before, right? In fact, you know, I maybe I knew those spaces existed, but you know, there was nothing like that anywhere around where I grew up. And the reason that I decided to be an animator, or I you know, endeavored to be an animator, was because that was the only thing that I thought I could do and, you know, make a living as an artist, was to do cartoons, right? So that was, you know, my thinking, my rationale. But when I got here to Atlanta, the campus of Atlanta College of Art shared the same campus with the High Museum. And so very quickly, you know, a friend of mine who was from the Bronx, she was like, yeah, those cartoons you're drawing are cute and everything, but come with me to this museum. And so she started taking me to the museum, and, you know, this is Manet, and this is what he does, and this is Degas, and this is Matisse, and this is Picasso. And like, she's giving me this like education outside of school. And, you know, slowly I started instead of drawing my cartoon characters, I started painting my cartoon characters. And then the cartoon characters disappeared altogether, and I just started making art. And so that was really impactful, just being exposed to those things. The other thing was, I mentioned before, the National Black Arts Festival and Freaknik. Both of those things opened my mind to expressions of blackness that was just so powerful and beautiful to me. Like I grew up, I always had a fascination with anything that had to do with Africa, partially because of my name, right? And the National Black Arts Festival brought all of these pictures that I've seen in books and, things that I read about. It brought them all to life, and it was really like wild to me to, walk down the street and see Samuel L. Jackson just hanging out, kicking it, or, some other like celebrity that I'd only seen in movies or on music videos, and they're just out being human beings, right? Like that was really like moving to me. And it not only did it make me want to be a great artist, it made me want to stay in Atlanta.
Okay. You've created many iconic paintings. Is there one piece that is your favorite?
I always say the very last piece that I've ever created is always my favorite, right? Because I'm always trying to like outdo myself with every piece that I make. I never want to feel like, oh yeah, that was easy. I got to give myself a challenge. I want to make it difficult. I want to push myself beyond my comfort zone. And so, yeah, every time I approach a canvas, I'm trying to do something more with it than I did the last time.
Now it's not as hard because we have social media, but how was it difficult to break through as an artist?
Oh, wow. Yeah. It was very, very difficult. In fact, at the time, so I graduated from college, from undergrad in 1997. And, during that time period, maybe up until about 2018 or 19, it was very, very uncommon to see a black artist in media, right? You might have one or two, people will talk about Jean-Michel Basquiat, or they talk about Kerry James Marshall, or they might talk about Romare Bearden or, Jacob Lawrence, like, someone from like way, way back in the day. But to see a contemporary black artist was a very uncommon thing. And so very early on in my career, I decided to like mess with that, right? And so the way that I began to like break into the art world was by literally like projecting this character that I created onto the covers of all of the highbrow art magazines. But this character that I created was like all of the stereotypes of like black hip hop swag, crotch grabbing, middle fingers up, smoking a cigar, entourage of people, Like I was, acting like this, but in the art world. And everybody's like, wait, artists aren't supposed to do that. Like, what, what's happening here? And so it was a real, like, for me, it was fun, juxtaposition. But it was also, a thing that no one had really seen before, right? And so, like I said, in the last, 7-8 years or so, we've seen a big shift in, the landscape, right? Like now black art is the thing, but back when I started, it was not. In fact, a lot of black artists used to try to hide their blackness. They wouldn't paint quote unquote black art, right? Like they would try to do something else so that the art market didn't know that it was a black artist, which could possibly mean you being typecast or not getting sales, right? But I did the opposite. Like I put my blackness on Front Street.
Do you feel like that struggle kind of influenced the art that you make?
Oh, most certainly. Yeah, most certainly. I mean, it was a critique and a challenge, to society and to the art market. I was very interested in the ways that as a society and a culture, we sort of celebrate certain, very limited views of like black masculinity and black people, right? So like a hip hop artist would get all the love, but somebody who's like, trying to advance the culture or, bring something to bear that, we need to consider that might be like more political or, something like that person would get kind of pushed to the margin. They would be vilified, right? But the guy, talking about let's drink 40s and, shoot up the club and that guy's the hero, right? And so I was really interested in those kind of things that were happening in society and media, and I wanted to like draw attention to them in a way to make people question the things that we thought we knew.
Earlier this summer, you hosted the Mayor's Youth Ambassadors at your studio. Thank you so much for creating that opportunity for us. We really appreciated it. And I remember you just mentioned politics, but why did you want to work with the ATL Year of the Youth and mix your art with politics?
Yeah, how does politics and your art, how do you feel like those two connected?
Yeah, man. I think, and I'm trying to remember who it is or who it was who said this, but I'm kind of butchering this quote. But there's someone who said that Black art is always political, right? We don't have the luxury of just making art for art's sake. Every expression, every statement, every time we walk outside, right, we are representing this community of Blackness. I used to joke around and say that being an artist felt like having a superpower, right? Like, waking up like Peter Parker got bit by the spider and now he can climb up walls, right? Like, waking up and realizing that I had the power to make images and tell stories through images, right? Like I realized that there's a responsibility in that. And with great power comes great responsibility. And so for me, the political part of being an artist is just, it's like the blood. It animates, what we create, because we have a story to tell, and oftentimes that story is attempting to counteract other stories and other narratives that are designed to diminish us. And so our art is political because it affirms our humanity. I always say in the future, historians will tell what happened, but artists will tell how it felt, right? Like we connect to history, we connect to our past through the art that was created. Not the policies, right? But the art.
There's so much I want to do with my career, as far as even including politics, but business, entertainment, and art. And I'm kind of like you, where I've been drawing ever since I could pick up a pencil. What advice would you give to young creatives that want to get into the art industry?
I would say two things. One is to be authentic, right? There's another quote, artist quote. It says, good artists copy, great artists steal. And the idea is that as an artist, you are inspired by, moved by, motivated by other things that you see, other artwork that you see, a song that you hear, a poem that you read, like and you can use that, you can borrow that, right? But to find your own voice, you got to work through all of that. You can't copy forever, because if you're copying, then you're always copying, you're not innovating, you're not creating. And so my thing is be authentic. Like, yes, copy as much as you need to, but in that, try to find your own voice. Try to discover your own voice. Like being an artist is like your style is like your fingerprint. Only you have it. Only you can do that. Nobody else can do what you do. You can do what somebody else does, but nobody else can do what you do exactly, right? Like you are always the captain of your own ship. Now, whether you decide to look in the mirror or look out the window, that's up to you, right? But looking out the window means that you're going to discover things that nobody else is seeing. If you're looking in the mirror the whole time, you're just going to keep reflecting back the same thing, right? So your job as an artist is to like innovate and to create. And the only way you do that is by being authentic. Yeah. The second thing that I would say, and this comes from Frederick Douglass, but agitate, 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 right? And not just agitate, for the sake of being a nuisance, right? But like, we don't learn, we don't grow, we don't evolve from a place of comfort. Gotta be made uncomfortable, right? Like the greatest lessons that you learned came with sweat and sometimes blood, you know what I'm saying? Because you gotta go through something to get to something, right? And so as an artist, our job, right? Again, we are reporting to the world past, present, and future, like what it means to be here. And the only way you can carve that out, the only way you can make that mark is you got to shake things up, right? Like, this doesn't look quite right. Let me flip that upside down and see what happens, right? That challenges the way everybody sees everything, right? Agitate, agitate, agitate.
You talked about evolution and innovation. I feel like now a lot of creatives kind of have a fear of AI, but I think like one of the most important things to remember is that AI it's based on what's already been done. It has no ability to have evolution or innovation. So thank you for that.
You mentioned style, and you have an iconic hairstyle that is also portrayed in many of your pieces. How would you describe your style and your approach to art?
My style is a fusion of what I call body, mind, and spirit, right? And those are represented by, body is represented by hip hop, right? Like it's the physical expression. Mind is represented by a movement that was very popular in the 1920s called negritude, which was, popularized in France, but it's this intellectual movement that critiques and expands the way we think about what it means to be Black, right? That's the mind part. And spirit is African spirituality, right? Particularly the spiritual practice of Ifa, which is from West Africa and Nigeria. And combining these three different expressions, right? My goal is to create almost a new cosmology of Blackness, right? A way of thinking about Black being that's not rooted in trauma, that's not rooted in articulations of lack, right? But that sees itself as infinite possibility. You asked about my about my haircut as well, and that comes back. It's a nod back to, I'm 90s golden era hip hop. You know what I mean? And one of my favorite hairstyles was this hairstyle. It's called a Gumby. And maybe in 2007, I was like, I want to do something different with my hair. I just had like a Caesar fade. You know what I mean? It's like, I want to do something different. I'm gonna do a Gumby. And everybody was like, I don't know about that. But then I did it, and everybody was like, yeah, that's it. So I've been wearing my hair like this since like 2007. But ultimately, I say all that to say that my style is about centering and affirming Blackness. And especially, as it relates to Black masculinity, dispelling the limitations, the very limited and one-dimensional portraits of Black men that we see in media and in the world, right? And so ultimately, like through my practice, through my work, I'm trying to humanize us and show us in our complexity.
Now, before we move on, you're obviously a big inspiration. Who were some of your inspirations growing up?
My first, most of my inspirations as a kid were like people on TV, right? So like J.J. Evans on Good Times, right? He was the first. And to this day, I don't know of any other portrayal of a Black male artist in popular media, right? But JJ was that guy. His art, like I remember there was one episode, and it wasn't JJ who said this, but it was another kid that he was like teaching how to paint, and they were criticizing him, and they said, don't you want to paint your way out of the ghetto? And he was like, I don't want to paint my way out of the ghetto. I just want to paint the ghetto. And I just thought that was such a beautiful sentiment, right? But those kind of things stuck with me. I'm not going to say his real name, but the character, Cliff Huxtable, was a big inspiration for me. In fact, I kind of modeled my academic career after that other guy that I'm not going to name. But, I always appreciated that he used his privilege and his intellect to create new narratives of blackness, right? I always appreciated that about him. And that it wasn't in a classroom, right? That he took it into the public sphere, right? So there's a whole field called public scholarship that I'm very much interested in, and I see myself as a participant in, through my work. But other than that, other folks, artists like Jean-Michel Basquiat, my absolute idol, Barclay Hendricks, Radcliffe Bailey, God rest his soul, my big brother, Charles Huntley Nelson, also a really fantastic, amazing artist and another, spiritual guide for me. I could probably name a dozen others. I didn't even get into rappers. And so there's a lot.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us. And on that note, is your favorite Atlanta rapper or artist?
Oh, easy. Andre 3K, 3 Stacks, Andre Benjamin. Yes, that's my guy. Yeah.
Okay, we got a lot of Andre 3000s and TIs.
Yeah. Nah, man. In fact, when people say, who's your top 5? Andre 3000. It's been number 1 in my top 5 for at least 15 years.
Wow. What's your favorite restaurant in Atlanta?
Favorite restaurant in Atlanta? That's a tough one for me because I am absolutely not a foodie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They say some people live to eat and some people eat to live. I'm an eat to live person.
Okay, then let me ask you, where's your favorite place in Atlanta? Do you have one?
Favorite place, quite honestly, is probably my studio. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for allowing us to have a visit, and thank you so much for coming on this show. We really appreciate hearing all of your words of wisdom and hearing your journey.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Fahamu Pecou.
Pecou.
Yes.
We got it. We got it.
out.
Kayla, you were right.
He was very inspirational. What did you think?
I loved it, especially from Black artists growing up and being an artist myself. Mo, he's definitely a pioneer, and I would love to hear more and even go to a studio to learn more about history, art history, and Black art history and the culture of everything.
Definitely. I thought his story was really interesting, and he had a lot to say about the culture, and I appreciated that. And I also thought his hair was really cool.
Yeah.
It's a staple for him, which
Iconic.
so I'm happy you all asked that question because you see that, even a silhouette of him, and you kind of know
You know who it
that
is.
is Fahamu.
That's that's his brand.
It is.
I saw something, a marketing post about symbols and logos versus brands. A brand is where you know who it is or what it is without the words. And yeah, we see that frame with that Gumby haircut. We know it's Fahamu.
Yeah.
Lord help us if he ever cuts it.
I don't think he will. Too iconic.
I felt that way about Busta Rhymes. And, well, we'll see. We'll see. So I did not know he was from Brooklyn, but hearing you all kind of dig into his inspiration and those stories about what led him to start from an animation major to, copying cartoons to just painting and then being inspired by JJ from Good Times.
Yeah.
You never know where inspiration comes from.
I'm really glad I got to ask him that question because even now, cultural references really influence how we act today and how our culture continues to grow. And it was just nice to hear and know his inspiration behind what he does, his background, his impact, the impact that he has today, even on me, because I did some research on him a while ago. So I really loved to get to meet him in person and get to talk and ask those questions.
Well, I'm hoping we can expand this ambassador program because in all of the interviews that you guys have done so far, each person has talked about that moment that they might have least expected but been so inspired Dr. Joycelyn talked about that. Courtney English talked about that. So when we publish those episodes, hopefully young people will hear that it's not always how you start out, but it's the decisions that you make along the way.
Definitely.
So you don't have to know what your next 10 years are going to look like. You just got to put one foot in front of the other and lean into your gifts. And as Dr. Fahamu said, you never know where you'll find inspiration. You just got to be open for it.
All right. One more time, just to make sure. Miss Lewis, what's the last name?
Dr. Fahamu
Pecou.
Pecou.
Okay.
Good job, y'all.
Dr. Fahamu Pecou. And this is Growing Up ATL.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought y'all weren't going to say it with me.
Oh,
Oh,
all right, ready?
Okay, one more time.
this is Growing Up ATL.
This has been another episode of Growing Up ATL, a podcast created by your mayor's ATL Year of the Youth ambassadors. Visit us at atlyearoftheyouth.com or follow us on Instagram at ATL Year of the Youth for more information.